we want to welcome everybody here.
Everything all at once?
Everything all at once.
It's honestly a sensation.
Aliens listen to it.
Gang solves childhood obesity.
That would be a good episode.
That would be a really good episode.
I would watch that.
The gang does solve childhood obesity.
Hopefully that's on the next
Hopefully
thing.
that's the next thing on the docket right now.
Yeah.
We're about to do it. We're gonna figure it out. We've been doing research all day today, and I hope that the people are ready for us to, make the world a better place. I think that's the goal, right?
No, I mean, do our little part to hopefully help out.
Just a small part. I think we have a lot more impact than just a small part when we're solving childhood obesity.
I think every voice counts towards making a difference. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it starts with us, and it starts with you, all of our wonderful international, intergalactic, interplanetary listeners out there today to help solve the problem of childhood obesity. We decided to talk about this today because a friend of mine sent me an article that was from a mainstream media source, and I looked through it and a couple other ones, and they're very inflammatory right now. All of them are give the kids drugs to fight childhood obesity. Children as young as 11 now getting recommended to get bariatric surgery, which is the stomach stapling surgery to fight childhood obesity. That's the first, out of the gate immediately we just go straight to surgery and drugs for the children, and that's how we fight childhood obesity.
Sounds like they already solved it. They already solved childhood obesity.
Well, if you believe what the media tells you, it does seem like that is a good solution. You know what I mean? That's the solution.
I don't think it's an immediate thing. I mean, you don't go from birth to 12.
Well, yeah, I guess you got 10 years in between and to make good decisions about your lifestyle and your life choices.
Stop being poor from birth to 12.
Right, and you won't have to take drugs or get your stomach stapled is what it seems like.
Right.
Yeah, there's plenty of SDOs, as they'd say, social determinants of health, that factor into that. Or genetic predispositions.
Yeah, well, I mean, have good genes or get surgery, according to mainstream media. But after reading a couple of those and seeing how crazy that sounded to me, I decided to look up where this was all coming from, which is actually from the AAP, American Association of Pediatricians, which is the largest group of pediatricians in the United States. I don't know about in the world, but definitely in the United States. And they released a huge document, which we all read prior to coming on here, about how to fight childhood, or the new guidelines, the new professional health guidelines towards treating and diagnosing childhood obesity. And childhood obesity is, I believe, above 25% BMI. That's the official statistic. If you're above 25%.
No, it's 85% is overweight and over 95% is obese.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
25% is pretty healthy.
Yeah,
Okay.
25% is normal. But if you're over 85%, the BMI for your age and gender, you're overweight. If you're over 95%, it's obese. If you're over 120%, that's morbidly obese.
First off, I'm still really surprised that they're using a BMI to calculate obesity.
Yeah, I thought that the BMI thing was kind of discredited in the past, but I guess not, because they mentioned that quite a bit in this study here.
Absolutely. Yeah, they definitely did. And apparently that's still a viable credential, but
I feel like I've read in the past that if you're in a lower range, it's hard to gauge with the BMI, but if once you hit a certain percentile, it's you're obese. Probably
to a certain extent, but there's also weightlifters and linebackers and stuff.
Right, that's what I was thinking about, because I was actually thinking about how that Bills player had a heart attack or whatever, and he seems like a pretty thin, obviously healthy guy, and he had a major heart attack that made him collapse. And then there are like larger linebacker dudes who clearly have a gut and are out there, and would they be considered unhealthy and obese?
Well, we're not here to determine whether or not a full-size linebacker is.
Right,
Today we're
right.
focused on
Child-sized linebackers.
Child obesity. Okay, so we got to figure out how to fix these children, and this article was huge. It was like a solid. To read the whole thing, it's a commitment of time.
I wouldn't even. Would you say it's an article? I feel like that's not a.
I would say scholarly article.
It's a scholarly article
I
for
think
sure.
that's probably
Absolutely.
a better word
I
for
mean, all these guys did a ton of research and analyzed like a lot of. It was like a meta-analysis study, so they looked at like. And honestly, I don't recommend reading this. It was not fucking fun at all. Don't read read the paper if you want to.
I
but
don't know. I thought
you're
it was
kinda
interesting.
You're kind of setting yourself up for a punishment, I think.
I mean, if you would like to learn as much as you can to do your part in helping fight childhood obesity, I would say read the paper.
You should read it. Before we get into like the article, I feel like, Dave, you brought up a really good statistic before we came on here. I feel like just kind of bring it home, like make this kind of a local thing. Can you tell people about that statistic that you told us about?
Yeah, I was reading some health like census information from Erie County, and for children aged K through 12, it was a mix of overweight and obese. It wasn't separated, the obese from the overweight. But 51% of the kids in Erie County. Ooh.
Yeah, got that for you.
Spooky.
That was spooky. Yeah, this is spooky stuff, so you should pay attention. 51% of the children aged K through 12 in Erie County labeled overweight or determined to be overweight or obese, as compared to 39% for Pennsylvania as a whole.
So Erie's doing good.
Erie is not doing great.
Damn. I got all these statistics backwards, apparently. That 50% sounded pretty good.
Terrible.
Terrible.
Over half.
Okay.
You want it lower.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up for us, Dave. I appreciate that. And this article, the article starts out just going over like all these different contributing factors for what makes a child obese, or maybe not what makes a child obese, but what sets a child up for obesity.
Yeah, I have like a screenshot here of kind of an overview of a lot of the big topics that they covered. If you want me to
let's go
read
through
that.
pick the first one.
Okay, so overweight and obesity are more common in children who live in poverty, obviously. So we'll have to solve poverty.
We'll
tonight,
solve poverty
guys.
first. That'll be first on our agenda. So we'll fix poverty and give the people healthy food to eat instead of McDonald's and frozen TV dinners. I feel like that's really the main contributing factor when we talk poverty, is that like these kids don't have access to like healthy or good food, and all they're getting fed is highly processed garbage.
Right. And that goes
fast
into
food.
the next one here, is under-resourced communities. I mean, food deserts are a really big issue across the entire United States.
We have a pretty prominent food desert here in Erie that stretches from like our downtown area, and the east side of town specifically is a very food deserted location.
Families that have immigrated, or children who experience discrimination or stigma. They go into a lot of other things, but that...
So let's talk about these first ones. Poverty and lack of access. We also have like our first ever person like looking at us like live, and he mentions that like his kids maybe don't want to eat good food and want the processed meatloaves and stuff from the TV dinners,
Right.
and macaroni and cheese.
So this is jumping ahead a little bit, or maybe not. It's everything at once.
Everything at once, baby.
So in this study, they actually did a focus on different parenting styles and how it affects the chances of childhood obesity. And it found that the only parenting style that really positively affected this issue was an authoritative style where
That was the only positive one?
that was the only positive.
So I
one.
have to be like, eat your fucking broccoli.
No, that's
No,
actually not what it is.
That's authoritarian.
I thought that's
Yeah.
what you said was authoritarian.
No,
No,
authoritative.
Authoritative,
Yeah.
okay. So that's like the medium ground there.
It's where parents respond to the child's cues of hungers and satiety.
Okay.
So basically, like when your kid says, like, "Hey, I'm hungry," you listen to them
You feed
instead of versus like, "You will eat when I say you will eat."
And you'll eat till I say you're done.
Right, and you will clean your plate
That's right.
because it hurts their ability to self-regulate
Okay.
their hunger and how much they're eating.
So then they just see like a plate of food and are automatically like, oh, I got to eat all
I
this.
have to eat all this, yeah.
And it's authoritative as compared. I can't remember what the more laid back one is.
I have it pulled up here.
Passive?
Negligent is the most.
Yeah, negligence is a bad one.
So I just
Negligent.
let my kids eat whenever they want, as much as they want.
Or
Ice
just-
cream all the time, mac and cheese.
Or just like not paying attention to it at all.
Or like a passive.
Permissive or indulgent is the other one, and then there's authoritative, which is the good one, and authoritarian.
So permissive and indulgent would just be like, okay, you're hungry, we're gonna eat, but it's whatever you
wanna eat.
Yeah,
and
macaroni and cheese, baby.
and however much
Ice
you
cream.
want. So authoritative is like, you're hungry, okay, we're gonna make sure you eat because you need to answer your body's calls, but we're gonna make sure you have something nutritious and healthy.
Right.
So I think that we need to take the blame from these first like 3 major contributing factors. I feel like childhood obesity is not the child's fault, but much more the parents. Usually
Yeah.
the child is the asshole in most of these shows, but I feel like this particular topic.
I mean, yeah, as a child, you don't have a lot of say over when and what you eat. I feel like, you don't really have any control over that, so.
You have what's given to you at home and what's given to you at school.
We all know school lunches are not
Super good.
nutritious.
Super good.
So good. That cardboard pizza, man.
That kept me alive
man.
for like 10 years of my
And,
life.
like,
Don't
the-
you talk about
The
that
dog
cardboard pizza.
food nachos.
That kept
the
me alive,
nacho
too.
day, man. Oh, I'm not saying I didn't love it.
How long has it been since we've been that age, though? I feel like there's been massive
long
leaps
time.
and bounds in like making sure
I
people
don't-
get nutritious food.
I
Is
feel
there
like
been, though?
I feel like
I
they
feel like-
get like an orange with lunch, and
Yeah.
now they're like, there you go, you're good.
I feel like that's ridiculous. I mean, I feel like if I went into like my high school or elementary school or middle school, they would have that same fucking cardboard pizza,
Mm-hmm.
those same nachos, and all the other same shit that's just like ridiculous.
But the places that don't seem to have them, from what I've seen, are like private schools or public schools set up in more affluent areas.
Of course.
Well,
they're not poor.
Yeah, that's not that's the first thing, dude. You don't be if you don't want to be have an obese child, don't be poor.
So then so how can how can the children be serviced and set up for success
You want to service the children, David?
to make sure that they don't have problems with obesity? Absolutely. We're here to take care.
This is a service to the children.
This is a service
This
to
is
the
all
children.
for the children here.
Exactly.
We do have lots of child listeners, so they should take notes.
Yes, children and adults that have children out there that are listening to this, make sure that you pay attention. We're going to come to a solution here by the end of the show, I promise. And so we got the socioeconomic factors as far as like money and affluence go. We have like resources that are available because a lot of places don't have like a grocery store, any sort of fresh produce for miles around, and they may not have a car, they may not have the ability to transport themselves to these places. Plus, I feel like that's such a huge waste of time, dude. Riding a bus to like a grocery store and then carrying all my groceries back I would say fuck that, dude. I was gonna say like maybe laziness has a part in this too, but I feel like in order to be skinny, you really have to like not be lazy. But I wouldn't be riding a bus and carrying grocery bags back and forth to my house.
I think if I remember
If I didn't have to.
I think I remember correctly in this scholarly article, there wasn't really a connection between like a sedentary.
Yeah, there was
They
definitely
talked
sedentary
about like a
lifestyles.
sedentary lifestyle contributing, but I don't believe that a sedentary lifestyle can be a huge contributing factor. I've been extremely sedentary most of my life, and I am not obese, and I've never struggled with obesity. So I wouldn't say that just because you're sedentary, you're automatically going to be obese, or just because you're lazy.
Yeah.
Because I would describe myself as a pretty lazy person. I love to lay around. So all these other contributing factors kind of have to come together.
There's also like an anti-lazy, like I'm sure there are people that are like working really hard and are are maybe not super obese, but obese because they don't have time to make or prepare or go to the store or eat any of these healthy foods, and they're just like hitting McDonald's, you know what I mean?
They don't.
And I don't think it's necessarily people being lazy. I think it's people being worn down by having to do so much just to survive.
Definitely.
We're in like a almost post-capitalistic, very corporatist nation.
Late-stage capitalism, baby.
Late-stage capitalism.
That's right.
My man Wallerstein.
And I think another thing that they brought up was that a lot of children live in areas where it's not necessarily safe for them to be like going outside and be active, or like those activities just are not available to them.
Sure. I mean, I had lots of opportunities for after school like sports and stuff like that, and there's definitely certain areas that just do not have that.
They don't.
And you can't just like run around in the street like I did in my neighborhood when it's not a good street to be for children to be running around and playing football or baseball or whatever it is they're doing, you know?
There was a positive correlation in that study between like natural things like trees being planted in green spaces and the healthy like exercising. Also a negative correlation between homicide rates and obesity, because you don't want to go outside and exercise if there's a chance that you're going to get murdered.
So the higher the homicide rates, the higher the obesity.
They did, from that study, they did find a link between those two.
That is correlation, not causation, just so we're clear.
That is correct.
And correlation does not equal causation. Just for all of our listeners out there that may not be scientists like you, Dave, scholars, and gentlemen.
Yeah, mainly scholar though.
Mainly scholar.
Yeah, not scientist or gentleman. Little gentleman, probably scientist at the bottom.
At the bottom.
list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we are scientists for the purpose of this. We've been studying and practicing this article. It also, it did talk about like sedentary lifestyles and video games and stuff, and how that is definitely part of it, and the lack of like education. I think that was also a thing they brought up too, that a lot of these kids just are not, like, as far as learning goes and the education system goes, nutrition and food health and dieting is really just like not on the priority list, especially in like certain areas where the main focus is just like trying to get these kids to graduate with a general education degree, you know what I mean, or like have like be able to pass like the PSSAs or whatever it is they need them to pass wherever they are.
Well, and they also talked about how the education level of your parent is a big contributing factor to childhood obesity as well. So, I mean, if you're living in a poor area and your parents went to the same shitty school that you're now going to, like, your chances of struggling with childhood obesity are even higher.
Very generational for sure.
I think that you have to nip it systemically, which is extremely not dangerous, extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Because there's so many factors that contribute into childhood obesity.
And that's, at least from a socioeconomic standpoint, that's why race is such a huge issue in it, because there's so much just generational, like, systemic damage
and trauma.
They do talk a lot about like race and racism affecting obesity in children, which it makes sense. I just have never connected those particular dots before. I thought that was like a super interesting and informative point. And it made me think about, because politics and stuff has always been something I haven't been interested in. And I hear all the time from people like, well, it doesn't affect me. That's why I don't care about it. But, I mean, it affects it affects every part of your life. And like the political situation in your city, state, neighborhood can affect things like the weight of your child and the health of your child. And that's why it's good to be informed about those things that are going on. You can make a difference in things you wouldn't even think about.
They make a big connection to between the mental health of like the children and their obesity levels too. Like they talk a lot about like comfort eating and like eating to relieve stress and get through traumatic events. A lot of people children might seek like the comfort that they're not finding at home or at school or at wherever situation they're in like that double cheeseburger from McDonald's or a piece of cake or cosmic brownies or whatever. And
that's a self-perpetuating cycle, because if you're dealing with difficulties at home that range from not being able to get enough food to like it's some kind of negligence or whatever. You go to school, kids, I don't know, maybe kids have changed, they haven't. I don't think.
I think kids are so horrible.
Kids are still horrible.
Right.
And by horrible, it's almost like a natural thing for them to just pick out differences and attack them. So if you're obese, then you're probably going to get called a slew of different fat-shaming type derogatory words.
Absolutely.
And then it makes you just like, eat more, or if that's your way to cope.
Right.
Then it's just
it's like a fat bastard situation. I eat because I'm unhappy.
Oh yeah.
I'm unhappy because I
seen
eat.
Austin Powers.
That's right. He knew it. They knew that was how it worked even back then. And I guess I don't know how long it's been since they last published a health guidelines for treating childhood obesity, but I feel like Austin Powers knew this cycle long before.
I want to say that it was either
these doctors.
It was either in the intro to this article, or like a secondary source that said it was either like I think it was 20 or 25 years since they've released an official.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
It was one of the two.
A lot of this stuff really, as far as like the treatment goes, it reminds me a lot of how we treat substance abuse, or how we
I was going to say the same thing. And I feel like a lot of the contributing factors to childhood obesity just reminded me a lot of like contributing factors to addiction, especially if you're starting out your addiction like kind of in your younger years.
For sure.
And how they described it as a chronic disease, which is exactly how addiction is described as well, as a chronic disease. And I feel like this is just a different way for people to deal with these things. Instead of drugs, they turn to food.
Right, and food's a lot more available to a 5-year-old than most drugs.
Right. Although you think there, some kind of connections between, drugs and food too. Especially, I don't want to say especially, I don't have the facts, but I think with like women in cocaine, I've met multiple women who would like do coke and stuff like that to try to keep themselves skinny.
Same with like Adderall,
Sure.
yeah.
Or Adderall, or not so much meth, but I guess that's another.
That's the thing now.
You will get skinny if you do meth.
People love meth these days. They're about it.
They are about it.
But that's one of the things that they actually talk about later on. As far as the treatment goes, I want to get to that a little bit later, the treating this with drugs. But first I want to talk about some of the earlier stages. Because like I said earlier, all of these news articles on like CBS and whatever news station you want to look at, Newsweek, Guardian, HuffPost, whoever it is, they're all saying like this really ridiculous shit about how they're saying we should give kids bariatric surgery and meds like off rip, when really that's like the worst case situation according to these guidelines that the AAP released. And early intervention strategies really just involve like education and interventions with the family, meeting with a nutritionist or health coach, getting involved in athletics and stuff like that, and trying to make lifestyle changes.
That's a lot of things to get involved in if you're low income and you're probably working multiple jobs and don't have the time to run your kids around to that kind of stuff. And the big thing they talked about was like the main or the main point person being a good educated PCP. And having that, I thought it was so interesting, how much they delved into how these physicians should use their words.
Yeah.
Talk to these kids.
Yeah.
Like, instead of saying your child, or this obese child, is saying like a child with obesity.
With obesity, yeah.
Yeah, because it is, and that's another, like, it should always be person-first treatment, person-focused treatment, not the disease. They are not the disease, they are a person with a disease, you know what I mean? That's one of the things they've always taught us, as far as, like, being able to build a connection with your client and building a therapeutic alliance with your client, is that they're a person first and you are treating a disease. They are not a disease. And
but I feel like there's a kind of a gulf between physicians, like doctors who focus on the body and doctors who focus on the mind, like psychologists and counselors and psychiatrists. You know, they're going to think about that stuff, whereas I feel like maybe a physician isn't as in tune with, you know, that kind of thing. They're there to make like their physical diagnosis, and they're not as concerned with words.
I think a lot of newer training, as far as like interacting with clients and stuff like that, spans across the board, from PCP to counselor to therapist to nutritionist to health coach. All that stuff is kind of important, and especially it talks a lot about motivational interviewing early on, like using motivational interviewing strategies to build motivation with the client to get them to want to change for themselves or to help them foster that change. And a lot of that is all focused on this like person first treatment, and using different questioning strategies and talking strategies that I like use a lot of times in interviews here and elsewhere. You know, it's really interesting stuff and meant to foster continued openness with your client and more, you know, helping them move in a certain direction. It's just like social engineering.
Yeah, but like, I don't even think like going to the doctor or anything is, or doing all these things are like, they're the next step, but I feel like they're secondary, because obesity has been continuously raising over the last 20 years or so. Mm-hmm. So there's other things going on before, you know, dealing with like the health coach type shit. Like, there's something going on a
like a psychological level or a family level?
On a societal level.
I feel like society, like the poverty and a lot of these things that people are facing have gotten worse over the last 20 years. I mean, and if they spent a big part of this article talking about those things, it's obviously a pretty big contributing factor, considering how much time they spent going over these like socioeconomic issues that contribute to obesity. And I would say anybody who's not in the top 5% of the country would agree that things haven't really gotten better over the last 20 years. You know, they've only gotten harder. People are still living paycheck to paycheck, if that, and to try and take care of a child on top of that. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these people are trying to do their best, but
I think it really starts like with an integrated education system too, you know. It would be really difficult to go through some of these different things that they're outlining, these different strategies that they're talking about implementing outside of like an already included education system. Even for like anybody who does have transportation or does have a job or does have anything going on, you know, just making sure that my child makes it to these appointments, whether that's pulling them out of school to take them there or going after school, before school, to these different types of meetings that they're outlining, whether it's like doing something athletic or meeting with a nutritionist or a health coach or a counselor or your PCP or whatever it is. It seems like they really want this to be like a weekly thing, you know what I mean? Like multiple appointments each week until the goal is completed. And maybe I could see this lasting like upwards of 3 months, you know.
I mean, a lot of the treatments they say last a lot longer than that.
Right.
I mean, they
That would
want
be, like,
to
the
do
shortest.
a very like long, to be successful in overcoming and like maintaining the weight loss for childhood obesity. I mean, it's a long-term program. I have the number in here somewhere, but it's like to maintain the weight loss throughout their life, like into adulthood, is upwards of like I think they said like $1 million in medical like appointments and treatments and like all the things that they would need to do in order to really like maintain that throughout their life.
I feel like that might be a little bit of an exaggeration. I personally have got to believe that with the right education and the right knowledge base at an early age, that they will reach a point of self-sustaining.
Here, it's so a modeling study has estimated that the total lifetime medical cost for 10-year-olds with lifelong obesity to be in the range of 9.4 to 14 billion.
That's also saying like lifelong obesity, though. That's saying that these treatments are not working.
Yeah.
I'm saying that when they do work, I mean, within 90 days to a year, I would say they are probably have the ability to self-sustain, I would hope.
I read the NPR article on this, which they're usually a little more reliable than most sources, and they had the median for this at 26 hours over 3 to 12 months.
So that's, I mean, 26 hours over 3 to 12 months, that's probably like a meeting or two a week.
Yeah. Like a half-hour meeting or...
Yeah, half-hour meeting twice a week for that period of time, which given it turns out it would be successful. If it is successful, it would be so much cheaper for these insurance companies and stuff to do that preemptively than to be treating a child with lifelong obesity throughout it. But also, I feel like the success rate is going to be very interesting. I don't think that was really talked about in there. I don't know that these programs really exist that they're talking about in there. I've never heard of any personally, but I would be interested to see what kind of success rates they're dealing with in treating this childhood obesity at an early age through these early intervention steps that they're kind of outlining throughout this article.
Well, and then the question is, are they covered by insurances?
Right. That's, I feel like, such a huge obstacle because if a big contributing factor to your particular childhood obesity is your socioeconomic issues, what kind of insurance, if you have any insurance, do you have that's even going to cover something like this for you? I feel like that is such a big obstacle that can't be ignored.
And I can't beat poverty through nutrition coaching and maybe through athletic skills and athletic prowess. I could beat poverty, but it's kind of a difficult situation and more of a long-term thing, because like if it really comes down to like my only option to eat is like McDonald's or frozen foods, there undoubtedly is some stuff that I can do, but is it really a realistic obstacle? You know what I mean? Can I beat McDonald's through physical training? You know
what I thought was interesting, though? It said that if you lived in a food desert, obviously obesity goes up. If you have a supermarket within a 1.6 mile radius, the obesity goes down. But then it said if there was multiple supermarkets in that 1.6 mile radius, it goes back up again.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that was in the scholarly article.
Yeah.
So the more options you have to potentially eat shitty is also something that can be factored into it.
Mm-hmm. So it's really like a multifaceted idea, and I think that the designation of having multiple supermarkets in a given area, I feel like there are probably some other factors at play that go along with having multiple supermarkets within the same area.
Having the money to spend what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like when I think of areas that have multiple supermarkets around them, like out here or other areas with a few different choices, I think of higher socioeconomic status and maybe the ability to buy more food. Whether it's healthier or not is completely up to question, and whether or not I need it out of convenience or if I need it out of whatever the situation
out of survival,
there's a lot of different factors for sure.
I think I thought of something.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
Tell us what you thought of, Dave.
So, there's community centers that take care of children, offer them healthy options. You have daycares that often are covered by different WIC and stuff like that. I think an interesting option that could be implemented from a welfare services type program are in-home
fat camps?
nannies. Not fat camps. No, not fat camps because... No, not fat camps, dude. That's the exact
There was like a fat
opposite.
camp on Disney Channel. It looked pretty cool. Like a long time ago, there was a movie about all these kids that went to fat camp. It seemed all right, man.
But that's part of
Shouldn't
the...
dismiss it so quickly.
That's part of the problem here, though, is
Yeah.
like the fascination with people being... There's a difference between having a healthy body and an unrealistically good-looking body.
Yeah.
And that is what kind of media hangs its hat on, like so many kids. And now social media, now you got like Instagram models, TikTok,
Right
all of
on.
this stuff. And like people just are children, you know.
Like there's only one way to look, as I
Exactly,
feel
right.
like the projection when like what a healthy body looks like on every person is different. It's
Right.
not like stick thin for every single person is going to be healthy.
Or like as a guy having like, you know, a six pack and, you know, just being totally fucking shredded, which,
Right.
you know, admittedly looks pretty fucking cool.
Thanks, Dave. I am pretty cool.
Yeah. But that's part of it, like, you know, like these weight loss programs, like TV programs, I mean, like Biggest Loser and
Sure.
shit like that. Like, it's almost like that militant, you know, like riding these people. And these are older people, you know, we don't have, you know, as far as I know, reality TV shows where they're lambasting children. That's like a sacred
No, it's
area.
coming though. It's coming.
yeah.
I'm sure we're working towards it.
They already got that like Master Chef for children. We'll have the Biggest Loser for children. This is America, so.
And
But
that's-
maybe that, I feel like that's also kind of inspirational for some people though. They see The Biggest Loser on TV and maybe these kids will be like, you know what, I'm a little bit thicker than I want to be, and look, these other kids are doing it, maybe I can do it too.
Maybe. I have never watched The Biggest Loser, so I don't know how they like present those people or like talk to them. I feel like they did talk about in this article, like not shaming a child for being obese, not making them feel shameful for their weight, because that is not going to help them. It's probably only going to make it worse. Even if they did decide to like try and lose weight, they would go about it in an unhealthy way, like go in the complete opposite direction of like an eating disorder because of how like ashamed they feel about their body, which is
Right.
not the way to approach
Does it
it.
talk away, what kind of approach did it suggest? Did it suggest one?
It was down towards the end, like when it was talking about, it was in the area where it's talking about how a doctor should approach, like, talking to the patient, to the child. And it's just like in the words that they use and how they approach the treatment, and not putting them down about it. Like it, I think it was right before like the motivational interview part, you know, making them feel good for making good choices, not making them feel bad for like the things that have happened to them in their
Right.
life to cause them to end up in the situation.
But
At some point, you really have to approach a difficult situation that's going to be up to the child to interpret.
well, that's why we're at the point where they're recommending bariatric surgery and medication, because the big thing that one of the big points they hinged on is that if a child fails to lose the weight, you don't want to call them failures.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like because of the mental ramifications of that can spread on through the rest of their life. And so that's why it gets to the point of them recommending these things, like if the
The
kid...
bariatric surgeries and the drugs.
And the drugs, because like if this child has tried everything and they still haven't been able to lose the weight, it's, obviously if it's like a genetic thing or they have a disease, you know, there's nothing they can like will themselves to do.
Right.
But if it's like a socioeconomic or a mental thing and they still can't do it, they don't want to be like, all right, well, you fucking failed.
Yeah, you suck.
Right, now you're just fat and you suck for the rest of your life.
Exactly, and you know, maybe one day you'll figure it out, but if you don't,
You're gonna die soon, so.
You're a failure and
Yeah.
you're gonna have a bunch of
It's
problems.
going to cost us all tons of money.
Exactly. And so like that's where they get to the point where they at like you're right, the articles kind of, you know, hinge their headlines on that, but it's really like a last resort.
It really is, according to the guidelines. And the part about the mainstream news articles about this article from the AAP is that they all had like these really inflammatory, dramatic headlines like the doctors want to give your kids bariatric surgery and drugs to fight obesity. And then it's really funny because, or well, maybe not funny, but it's fucked up that the article basically goes through the AAP article, for the most part, like relatively accurately. You know, like once I read the articles, I'm like, oh, okay, it's not as dramatic or dramatized or as awful as the headline would lead me to believe after actually reading the AAP health guideline article.
Hold on, real quick. Enjoy the hockey. We enjoyed having you.
Peace. Love you, Todd. Number one fan right there, guys.
Number one fan. He's the best.
He even saw us on Twitch. We're live streaming this one today. I don't know if there's any. I don't think I can tell if there's anybody else watching us on the stream, but we love you guys.
I didn't want to throw you off there, but we have to shout out our Twitch listener, Todd.
That's right.
Okay, so now that he's
but they did. I mean, the medication and the bariatric surgery is like a very last resort. Like there are so many steps that need to be taken before the medical professional even considers that. Mm-hmm. And then even like with the bariatric surgery in particular, the doctor can make a referral, but if they still have to go to the surgery center and like have meetings with the surgeons, with the family, with the child, and then they still might not get the surgery. Like the surgeon could come back and say, no, I don't think that this is the right next step. Like,
and I think one of the big things about that change is that prior to this, I feel like you were not really allowed to give a child bariatric surgery or weight loss drugs, or it was a much more taboo topic. Like now it's like openly okay, maybe not openly okay, but it is considered a viable
I mean, it's obviously been being done because that's why they changed the guidelines, because they feel like there's enough evidence with past cases to say, yeah, this is like a medically viable next step to be taken. Mm-hmm. They did, like we're talking about the bariatric surgery in particular, about case studies since the early 2000s of children between like 12 and 18 or whatever getting bariatric surgery and like the results from that. So, I mean, it's not like it's never been done. It has been being done, and clearly they've been seeing positive results from it.
Yeah, and I think what it comes down to is these doctors are trying to solve the same problem that we are on the podcast tonight. Right. And they're not sociologists and they're not politicians. So overhauling a complete societal structure to try to make obesity less of a problem is not their wheelhouse. So they're just trying to do the best they possibly can.
With the sources they got.
With the resources they have. And I mean, it might seem like a little shocking, like, wow, a 12-year-old that needs to have bariatric surgery or be put on weight loss medication, like, oh, that's a failure of this country. And that comes back to, like, stigmas against poor people and stigmas against fat people and,
brown people.
Stigmas
against everybody. Anybody that's going through a difficult time in their life where they may not have all the resources that other people may have available to them.
Like, I can't remember who the person was, but I literally saw someone, like, that was their story, was this article, and it was just like, we've failed. Like, their tagline on it, was, we've failed as a country because they're giving kids, like, these surgeries and medications. And so, obviously, there's so many of us that see that it's a problem, that obesity is such a huge issue in America that we have to resort to this more and more. Or it's like, if we had, like, a 2%, let's say, that's extremely low. I don't know if that's like that anywhere in the world. But let's say if, like, obesity affected, like, 2% of kids, they would probably still come out with this to try to help them. It might not be the most pressing issue because not a lot of kids would deal with it, but it also wouldn't be front page news.
Right.
It's the fact that we've gone from, I think it was like
50% here in Pennsylvania.
Or Erie County.
Erie County. 39 in Pennsylvania.
And that was overweight to obese, which overweight is, an issue in the country too. But, from like 1999, I think it said it went from like 13 or 14% to 20%. So like that 6% hike
increasing.
it's an alarming amount that it's increasing.
And they
too.
did touch on how the pandemic has also seemingly increased those numbers as well, because that has vastly disrupted like the routines of kids. Like a lot of kids aren't even going to physical school every day of the week now. Like they are sitting at home on their computers,
Right.
doing their classes, which I'm sure is going to contribute even more to childhood obesity if they're not even getting up to go to school anymore.
I mean, how do you do a gym class on
Right.
cyber school?
Right.
And how do you get involved in athletics, sports, football, baseball, basketball, whatever? And I mean, you can still do that in cyber school, but I feel like I would personally have been a lot more resistant to those types of ideas.
Well, and I even feel like the mental health aspect of that is also a big contributing factor.
Right.
Like as a child, especially if you're used to going to school and like that's been your experience so far in life, and then all of a sudden you don't have that anymore, and like you just have to sit in your house and look at this computer screen, and like this is school now. Like you thought school sucked before, now it really sucks because you don't even get to see your friends.
I think you're gonna enjoy this because you like when I say you might be right. So I'm gonna circle back around to this because I really wonder how many sports teams or gym classes that obese kids really enjoy being a part of, because that's part of the shame factor, especially if you're with like healthy kids.
Oh my God, those poor kids, dude.
But that's what. But so
even in my high school experience, like the larger children just were cannon fodder.
Well, not only that, like when I think about it, back when I was a kid, it seemed like the bigger a person was, the less they wanted to be involved in those physical activities, because it's like a point of going back shame. So like the you're right thing comes back to, I don't necessarily think like fat camp, especially not calling it fat camp, because that just defeats
No, you don't call it that, probably not.
But like something like you remember, I don't know if they're still around, but you remember like Curves?
Yeah,
The gym for like,
for women.
Yeah, I don't know what the correct terminology is.
It's just women gym.
Yeah, women gym. But I swear, like I remember seeing like, like classes for like overweight.
It might
or, like,
have
plus
been,
size
like some of the marketing was towards like more overweight women.
So like, maybe something that would be good would be like, gym classes offered, obviously not during school time, but like extracurricular activities where you get everybody together who's kind of in the same boat, so you don't have that like shame factor. I thought about that too when we were talking earlier, but I really feel like that is almost segregation in certain ways of putting all of the obese children together to do athletics or do certain gym classes or whatever, is almost like putting the kids on the short bus or whatever, like some sort of way of just like
it's like singling them out more.
It separates them from the rest of the class rather than brings them together. But
I mean, I think it's
like, how else are you going to treat it though at the same time? I think it singles them out more when you have kids all go run laps and all the I don't want to say all the like healthy weight kids are just running circles around this person. I mean, because they send them to a doctor, and the doctor, it's a health thing, so he's doing his job, but like you send him to like coaches and trainers or whatever, like health classes or whatever. So why is it okay to do it on an individual level but not put it in a group? I think it'd be a great way for people that go through a common experience. We've had experience with something like this where you put people together that are going through a common thing, and that can almost build like sense of community, and build the community and build like their sense of
I feel like
purpose.
maybe during school hours might not necessarily be the best place to do that, but definitely like facilitating something like that would probably be helpful.
It would really have to. I feel like it would have to be done right, and it would have to be almost like a secret, you know what I mean? If it was done during school, like you don't go around telling the people that you're in, the special gym class for the obese children, or the special athletics class for the obese people, and that's fine. You can keep that confidential, and hopefully they would foster that sense of community, and it wouldn't have to be like a open secret, because it could also be like used, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you go to the fat gym class or the obese gym class or whatever.
I don't think you would do it. I would not advocate for doing it during school hours.
No, I don't think that would be the way to go about it.
At the same time, when they're going to all these classes, if they're going to them together, they're obviously going to meet other kids that are struggling with the same types of issues with obesity and their weight and their physical health.
I mean, and there's obviously, as the statistics show, more and more, it's becoming more prevalent, so there's more people that are going through that.
And it could be like a voluntary thing too, you know what I mean? Maybe you have a certain, like, you don't say only obese kids could go, but this is a like a lower speed gym class or whatever, however you want to phrase it, you know what I mean? That way it's a little bit more of an introductory level, a little bit lighter of the workload or whatever.
Like the duck pond in pool class.
You know, something that's a little bit more gentle and kind and allows for not just the obese kids but the other, because I mean lots of people struggle with physical health and dexterity, you know. I'm sure like some of the nerdy
I would have done that.
My fellow nerds out there that weren't incredibly athletic might also feel better going to a gym class and playing dodgeball or playing other fun activities and sports with other people that are not like top tier athletes that just school everybody. Yeah. We don't want a bunch of Dave Skrupskis playing basketball against us that are dunking on us all day.
I would have been in that gym class for sure.
And this is here's a spitballing idea here. So it's an after school thing, but you know how we make it so there's no hurt feelings? Doctor referral. You have to have your doctor referral. Almost like going to a physical therapist. You can't just go into a physical therapist and just be like, I want to join these guys and exercise, and they be like, no, you can't do that.
Physical therapy, please.
And that kind of starts the dialogue too from a doctor, you know what I mean, and gives them an opportunity to kind of educate and send that referral, you know what I mean, talk about the referral process and why this would be a good idea and what he's concerned about and all of those things.
Foster a solution, hopefully.
And if you have people doing healthy, positive things together and building community, and a lot of them share like other issues too, like socioeconomic risk factors.
Right, depression, PTSD, whatever it is.
PTSD.
Anxiety.
I mean, like the mental stuff too, cultivating a healthy society there. But as far as like the socioeconomic stuff, if you have these people getting together, doing healthy things, growing and learning that, and that can be helpful to future generations to try to break the links, the chains of poverty.
Right. I think that might be like the solution. I think we might have solved it.
We solved it, guys.
Congratulations.
We did it.
We did it. The solution is building community amongst people that are struggling with physical health issues, including obesity, and allowing them a base to nurture and encourage each other, as well as receive physical help from nutritionists, life coaches, doctors in a safe, healthy, productive way. And
I think a great way to give back would be if you were one of those kids who dealt with childhood obesity and you found a way to overcome it as an adult, to go out and volunteer and help these kids out, because your story could be an effective tool to give them hope.
And there already are programs like this too. Maybe we didn't quite solve it. Maybe we need to revisit this, because there are programs that are like this that are designed for people that struggle with socioeconomic factors and getting the right nutrition in their health and all of these factors that kind of go into this. And maybe they are not being properly utilized, or there are not enough of them, or maybe they aren't getting the funding and the support that they need from the people that could really make it flourish or make it grow.
I'm sure.
Grants are very competitive, and the ones that aren't, like the governmental ones too, but a lot of the private grants are very, very specific and very tailored towards areas of the world and counties and different what's the word I'm looking for? Different causes that the people giving out the money hold near and dear to their heart. So it is from personal experience, I know that landing that money to make this shit work is an extremely arduous and painstaking task.
And you need to have the people that are willing to do that, like in the program, willing to do whatever those factors are to get that grant. So, I mean, and I feel like with programs like these, a lot of these people are probably just like volunteers, you know,
Sure,
they have
yeah.
jobs and lives. So, like, the task of trying to get a grant for their program is probably too much.
Yeah, I agree. But hopefully, with this new guidelines being set out and put in place, there are a lot more people that are looking at this and talking about this, and hopefully the people that are interested in this kind of things are not the kind of people that are reading the news or the dramatized headlines in the news and are actually reading these kinds of papers and are able to, you know, make a difference and maybe make more grants available and kind of really look at tackling this project. Because I feel like it's been, people have been aware of it, but I feel like it's also been swept under the rug a lot. You know, it's not something that's getting a lot of attention as far as what people are going to do about it or how they're going to change it. You're not really reading like about success stories of people that have overcome obesity, like you are maybe drug abuse. But hopefully people are able to see this and are able to look in the future and talk to the government, people in the government, and read.
I mean, I think that
ones that are listening to us right now.
What I hope is that studies or scholarly articles like this bring more attention to the fact that obesity is not a personal failing. Because I think that is where a lot of the like stigma and shame comes from, is that like I am failing and I am doing something wrong because I'm obese, when that's not necessarily the case.
At the end of the day, we just need to educate ourselves and not read the stuff that's in the news. Go to the source, read an actual scholarly article. Do it. It's horrible, but you'll thank yourself for it after you're done.
It's not that bad.
It's not horrible.
It's not that bad.
Maybe I'm biased because I've had to read so many of. I just read so many of these.
Never forget that education is one of the most powerful weapons that you can give yourself.
True.
Against
Don't listen
any enemy.
against any enemy. So it's not horrible.
It's not. You should post the link to this scholarly article.
I did
in the description.
I will. I will post it in the description on YouTube. Go ahead and read it. Check it out. It's important stuff for real people. And read more scholarly articles like this. Don't just read the news headlines. Please don't read the news headlines. Read the scholarly articles that the news headlines are reacting to, like we just did. Thank you guys so much for listening. We love you all. Have a great day.
Bye.
Keep fighting the good fight.